Good morning, everybody. I'm Ruth Hunter from RAP's LA support team. I'm joined today by my colleague Sally Wilson, and we've also got an absolutely fabulous guest panel. I don't think we've ever had this many guest speakers on one of our webinars before, so a really, really warm welcome to Ian, Kat, Dawn, Becky, Victoria and James, and I'll introduce them all hopefully very shortly, but thank you very much everybody for joining us. Just a few housekeeping rules. Today's session is being recorded and will be available to download from our website shortly after the session's completed, in case you want to reflect back or any of your colleagues couldn't make it today. Everybody is on mute with the exception of the speakers. And if you do want to pose a question, and we hope that you do, please use the chat function that we've just managed to identify. And if you could please put who your question is directed at. So for example, if you've got a question that you think is going to be for Kat, please put question or Q for Kat and then the topic, or Q for Vicky and then the topic. Perfect. I'm moving forward. Okay, so what's in today's presentation? We're just going to have a quick overview by me, and we're going to throw some quick poll questions to you just to see what's happening and where your planning is for your local authority. And then we're going to get an update from Ian Manley from SLR as to who supported RAP with the recent update of the Household Waste Recycling Centre guidance. He's going to go over what we considered when we updated that guidance, what's new and how you can make best use of it. And then we've got some fantastic good practice case studies. We're going to hear from Kat Holden at Lancashire County Council, talking us through the reuse shops and the reuse hub and the partners that they work with. Then we've got Vicky from Cornwall Council and Becky from Suez, talking about the reuse revolution that's been happening in Cornwall. We'll have a short break then for some question, not a break, we'll have a short question and answer session to touch upon some of the topics that they've covered. And then we'll move on and we'll hear from Dawn from Suffolk County Council on the redevelopment of one of the existing sites while still maintaining operations. And finally, we'll hear from James at Hertfordshire about the creation of the new super site, which is all really exciting. And again, we'll have some time for questions and answers before we wrap up. So we've got a really busy programme, so please do engage with us and ask any questions throughout. And before I move forward, for those of you perhaps new to RAP's webinar programme or possibly not really aware of the scope of RAP's work, RAP is a global environmental action NGO transforming our product and food systems to create circular living. We examine sustainability challenges through the lens of people's day-to-day lives. We transform the systems that provide the products we consume. We catalyse action from policymakers, businesses, NGOs, local authorities and citizens to make it happen. And household waste recycling centres are a gateway to a circular economy. And for those of us that have been in the industry a little while, it's remarkable when you reflect back on the transformation journey of these sites. And that's down to local authorities, their partner waste and resource management companies, and wider third parties investing, believing and delivering change. So I think really a round of applause to you all at this start. So we're just going to move forward with a little bit of audience participation with the first poll question. Jess, if you can launch the first poll question, please. Okay, so do you have an agreed long-term strategy for your existing HWIC network? Is it a no? Yes, you're looking to rationalise. Yes, you're looking to rationalise and maybe create super sites. Yes, you're looking for expansion. And yes, you're looking at some sort of replacement. If you can just vote, please. Give it a few more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Jess, if you can share the results, please. Okay, so a little bit of a leader there in that 60% of respondents haven't got a strategy as yet as to what they're planning. Some others are looking to rationalise, 10% expansion. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag there, really. Perhaps hopefully after today's session, those that haven't got a strategy, you may get some inspiration to reflect on and look back as to how you can move forward. Okay, poll question 2. What are your, if we can launch it please, Jess, what are your biggest challenges in managing your HWRCs? And if you can tick all that apply. So is it the demand and busyness of your sites? Are you constrained by space? Do you get challenges from commercial abuse? Is safety a consideration, a challenge? Costs and budgets? Citizens' expectations? Or regulation change? Just give it a couple more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Jess, over to you, please. Okay. So looking at that, space is what the highest or biggest challenge that people are anticipating, and I think for ourselves with some authorities that we've worked with and supported, that reflects that. Again, commercial abuse, demand of sites, budgets. So I think it's fair to say that there's quite a lot of challenges that are affecting the management, operation and for planning of sites. So again, hopefully the guide and the case studies that you hear from today may help you make some decisions going forward. And the last one of a little bit of audience participation. Jess, please can you launch poll question 3? So one that you've perhaps got a little less control over, but over the last 5 years, have you seen a change in mindset of your citizens using your household waste recycling centres? Is it yes? Are they actively coming on site seeking to recycle, having the materials sorted right? Are they willing to recycle, but perhaps not been thinking about it in advance before they get to site? Are they actively seeking out reuse options? Or are you seeing no mindset changes and that they're just turning up to site and expecting to put it all in the residual, coming in with black sacks? Just give you a few more seconds. Okay, Jess, if you can please close that one. Well, I think that's a real positive outcome, that the smallest score in there is that people aren't making any effort, only 7%. So I think that's great that you're seeing that transition and more people are taking it on board and wanting to make a difference and recognising that the materials that they've got are a resource and have got a benefit. So that's a real positive. And again, well done to everybody. So thank you everybody for joining in those and sharing your insights and thoughts. So I'm now going to hand over to Ian. Like I said at the start, Ian has supported WRAP with the update of the recent Household Waste Recycling Centre Guide. He's got an awful lot of experience with SLR and previously worked for a local authority and managed and was responsible for Household Waste Recycling Centre site. So over to you, Ian.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Ruth. Yeah, great to be here and talking to you about HWRCs. Could you just flick on to the next slide, please, Ruth? It's just got a kind of you did it for me there, Ruth, but there's just a brief introduction. Prior to kind of coming across to SLR, I spent all of my kind of beginnings of my working life in Dorset in one way, shape or form, working within waste and recycling services. And that really gave me a great exposure to all the ups and downs of running HWRC services right through the pandemic, but also probably things that I look back on more fondly around kind of developing new infrastructure. So yeah, a nice scenic shot there of Swanage Recycling Centre, quite close to the sea, and then another one in Bridport. But those were the fun bits. There are perhaps many scars, as many of you will have from running these services. They are indeed very beloved in our industry, play a key role, and yeah, that was a kind of a good foundation for us, and probably some of the reason why SLR may have been selected in helping to support the review of the guide. So if you could have the next slide, please, Ruth. So since moving to SLR, I've worked and visited a lot of HWRCs up and down the breadth of the UK, which has meant that I've been involved in new site development, network rationalizations, benchmarking, best practice, a variety of things. And yeah, my experience from just a local level has then kind of grown out to kind of witnessing kind of similar issues and problems all up and down the UK. So what we've really tried to do is bring in as much as that kind of practical experience to the refresh of the guide as possible, and really trying to relate to some of the challenges that you will all be facing when considering these services. So if I can have the next slide, please, Ruth. And some of those challenges, this is just really a bit of a mind dump from me, really, about all the things that have been bearing down on recycling centres, not least for the last decade or more, but really kind of poignantly within the last 5 or so years. Loads of different things that have made life really difficult to operate these services. There are the aspirations of the councils and where they want to head, the changes in regulation that have made operating these sites more and more difficult. In the backdrop of kind of growing pressures from populations, less and less money to actually deliver these things, throw the pandemic in there as well, and there's probably been kind of no more turbulent time for these sites in the last 5 years or more. So the time in which the last guide was produced and the time that we've revised it now, a lot has changed. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of reflect on that, really. Could I have the next slide then, please, Ruth? So right from the outset, we didn't want to kind of rest on our laurels and take our own experience for granted and do that. We wanted to engage and make sure that we were setting off on the kind of the right foot, really. So via Nordo and Larac, we put out a small survey asking questions about what the opportunities and challenges were facing these services in future. So kind of a big shout out and thank you to those that participated in that. And around the kind of the question of opportunity, it was very clear that repair and reuse featured very highly in our thinking and your thinking around what these services needed to kind of capitalize on in the future and how they needed to evolve. So that was really reassuring to see. We kind of expected it, but it was good to have that kind of echoed back to us. And then a couple of quotes there from written responses around kind of key things that people felt were opportunities. Can I have the next slide, please, Ruth? Same too with challenges, really kind of aging infrastructure, the burden of regulation, and the kind of the costs related to delivering these services kind of jumped out from the responses that we got. So we took all of this great information from the start, and that allowed us to kind of structure our thinking around what was important to go into the guide and how we should structure it. Can I have the next slide, please? So the previous guides was a really good guide, and I know I used it myself when I was in a local authority. It brought together a lot of great information. So we had a really sound starting point from which to kind of base this update on. But we wanted to make it as kind of real world as possible. So to do that, we layered in a range of different information that we achieved from interviews. So we had interviews with people in local authorities, we had interviews with people in the kind of the commercial sector around their thoughts and feelings around these services, how they change, what the challenges were in future. So that was a really key aspect of making the guide real and up to date. There's a data section in the beginning of the guide where we've updated public data sets on numbers of recycling centres, which I'll go into a bit more in a bit. But yeah, there's a data update in there. And then after my slot today, you'll hear kind of a selection of some of the kind of the key case studies that help support the work within the guide. And my last point there around not reinventing the wheel, I think, is really important. A lot of what we understand about these recycling centres isn't overly complex, and there is a lot of good work already out there. So the guide in our mind was a kind of, we felt that it would be a really great starting point to point out to some of those really other good pieces of work and form kind of a basis from which to kind of start your thinking about how to deliver changes in the service area. Could I have the next slide, please, Ruth? So in terms of the structure, it was never intended to be read cover to cover. If you do manage to do that, let me know, because there's a lot of information in there and you would maybe nod it off halfway through, because there's loads and loads of stuff in there, loads of great information. But the way that we've structured it is that you can dip in and out depending on what it is that you want to do at any given time. And I'm going to talk through those sections and what each of those sections represent and how we thought that how they may be useful to you. So could I have the next slide, please, Ruth? So section 1 is really about the context and the background of HWRCs. In here, we've got the kind of the key legislation and regulation relating to them. We've got some of the key statistics relating to the numbers of sites, the coverage across the country, and really kind of the background and the scene setting around why they exist and why they're important in the wider picture. So the rationale behind this section, really, we had in mind local authority officers getting to a point where they're wanting to take a decision or make changes. There's a lot of good information in this bit that you can lift out and use in committee and cabinet reports to set the scene around what recycling centres represent. If we could have the next slide, please, Ruth. Section 2 is a bit more kind of data and understanding heavy, and this is really kind of encouraging you to become more of an expert than you already are in your services. You are best placed to understand those from dealing with them at a local level, and there are lots of things that you already have in terms of data and resources that you can pull together to kind of crystallize that understanding of your services. And this section, or the first part of it, is really about making sure you've got all of the kind of the key things lined up to be able to champion the cause, create the case, and defend, rationalize, do whatever with your services that you need to, but coming from a kind of a sound evidence base. In here also, there's a section on service delivery models. This is kind of something that we do as an organisation quite a bit for councils, looking at how the services need to be delivered in future. The last guide only really focused on contracted out services, but as many of us will know, there are many different ways of how these services can be delivered, and we have provided a range of information about kind of 3 headline ways about how these services can be delivered. I mean, since the last guide, there has been a number of councils that have delivered these services differently. So that service delivery bit was informed not just by industry input, but kind of some of the wider work that we've conducted for councils when looking to how to deliver these services in future. Can I go on to the next slide, please, Ruth? So yeah, section 3 is really kind of the practical section in my mind. It takes into account kind of some of the wider policy approaches to operating recycling centres and some of the practical things that you can do at recycling centres to improve customer service, improve performance. This is kind of the practical chapter. And in here, there's quite a chunky section on booking systems. Booking systems has probably been the single biggest change that's occurred in this space probably since the last guide, and many councils have considered, implemented, are enjoying booking systems, and there have been previous webinars and a variety of information on those. So we try and lay out in here a variety of information to help you kind of consider what that means for you as a local authority and whether you want to implement that. There is also littered throughout this section, littered's probably the wrong word actually. Yeah, sorry about that. all linked in this section, best practice examples of how these things have been achieved up and down the UK, really. Section in there on communications as well, but a really kind of a practical section, which is not necessarily about developing and building things. It's about how changes can be made within your existing services to create improvements, drive out efficiencies. Yeah, just a real practical hands-on chapter, section 3. Can we move on to section 4, Ruth, please? Next slide. Section 4, in contrary to that, is more related to building and expanding facilities, whether that be developing new sites or making the best use of existing sites. So in here, there is examples of best practice in terms of design. There's also examples of where sites have been expanded and the kind of the process that you may go through to do that, the thinking that you might want to kind of employ to allow those things to happen. And this bit we recognise as being really, really challenging. Councils don't have the money that they once did to be able to do these things, and therefore justifying the decisions to actually get these things to begin to roll is very, very difficult. And hence why we have provided a section about delivering the change. We recognise that all decisions relating to future spend in councils at this point in time are extremely difficult, and it's likely that decisions relating to this kind of infrastructure will come up against equally worthy cases within councils for future investment. Therefore, we kind of lay out a framework about how we feel that you should perhaps go about gathering your evidence and making the case for getting this investment in services. It is far more difficult than it has ever been to get that investment, but we're hoping that the examples that we've got in here, some of the case studies that you'll hear later, will help in a kind of a logical sequence, allow you to piece those things together and make a compelling case for the investment that is needed in a lot of these facilities. We've all got and all experienced creaky infrastructure out there. We may have one or two great sites within a network, but there are always those that need attention, could do with expansion, are close to the limit should regulation change. So section 4 is really about how you go about doing that and gaining the support to get that ball rolling and getting that investment into services. And then final slide, please, Ruth. And as I've said throughout, we haven't tried to reinvent the wheel. There is a plethora of great information out there around things relating to these services, which we have tried our best to collate and bring together within the guide for you to use, making the guide a kind of a great landing spot, starting point for anyone who wants to start looking at this in more detail, whether that be people starting out in the industry, people only beginning to get to grips with what recycling centres and HWRCs mean, and potentially senior officers as well who are thinking about delivering information to elected members and things like that as well. But there's a breadth of information beyond this guide, but I would say that the guide is a great starting point to start your kind of detailed thinking about how you deliver change in this area. And it's made a lot more colourful by the case studies you're about to hear about. So yeah, that's what I'm here for today, to give you this bit, but also to really listen to the case studies, because that's the thing that brings this to life. So thank you.
Thank you, Ian. That was really interesting, and you did a really good job of trying to bring the guide to life in such a short period of time, because there is, as Ian has highlighted, an awful lot of information and opportunities to signpost to case studies, other areas of interest. And I think Ian, the SLR team and Sally did, they had a difficult task to sort of try and narrow it down, because they could have included so much within that guide. So yeah, we would really urge you to take a look at the guide and utilise some of the references and additional resources that we've got within there. So yeah, that's Ian. If you've got any questions, just a reminder, please do post them in the chat and we'll get to them at the Q&A section. So now we're going to hand over to Kat, who's a Principal Waste and Resource Officer at Lancashire County Council. And it's really, really pleasing to see Kat here. She's one of my ex-colleagues, a former Lancashire colleague. So thank you very much, Kat, for joining us today.
Thank you, Ruth. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about our reuse schemes on our household waste centres in Lancashire. So if you just want to move on to the next slide, Ruth. can you still see me there? Has my video gone? I put my audio on. I think my video might have gone at the same time.
We can still hear you though, so that's good.
Oh,
We can hear you, Kat.
okay, I shall carry on there even if you can't see me. So just to put things into a bit of context, in Lancashire we have 16 recycling centres. So that's 15 household waste centres and 1 community recycling and reuse centre. The recycling and reuse centre is on one of our smaller sites, and it doesn't accept any residual waste, but it does have a reuse shop. All of our recycling centres are operated in-house, and we've been doing that since 2019. So we do have a selection of different types of sites in Lancashire. We've got some large split level sites. We also have quite a few smaller sites as well. So the challenge has really been to sort of retrospectively fit in some reuse shops where we can, and also to fit in different types of reuse options in some of our smaller sites. So the picture there, that's Preston Recycling Centre. And the red arrow is just pointing to what was a storage compound that now has a reuse shop in it. So we retrospectively just put in a container store. We've got a shop in there and parking. So it's a nice discrete area in there, just close to the exit of the site. If you can move on, please, Ruth. So the 3 reuse shops are on Garstang, Preston and Burnley. All of our recycling centres, recycling staff on the recycling centres are trained in reuse as part of their induction. So whatever reuse option is on their site, they've got the underpinning training in reuse. And we use CLAW, condition, labels, appeal and working as part of the training. So ideally they'll be looking at the condition, whether it's rusty, mouldy, etc. Has the item got labels, such as the fire labels? Is it appealing? Is someone likely to want that item, or is it outdated? And does it function? This is just a quick overview of for example, a chest of drawers to check the drawers are working. So it's just something that's designed for staff to just quickly be able to assess something. And the full process is speak to a customer, engage them in a conversation, ideally about reuse and items suitable for reuse, CLAW assessment, and then store. So where there is a reuse shop on site, our staff will all be trained in how to operate the reuse shop, including using the till, stocking the shelves, and anybody who works on that site will take a turn usually within the shop running it. So they'll see the full process of identifying an item suitable for the reuse shop, transferring it over to the reuse shop and seeing it sold as well. So they're all part of that process. We have a pricing structure in place that all the team use, and we've not accepted any cash in our shops since the pandemic. And this has been fine. It's been very, very problem-free, really. It's for us, it really works, not accepting cash. Do you want to move on to the next one, Ruth? So we recognise we wanted to expand reuse, but there wasn't a great deal of space on a lot of our sites. And really we wanted to increase the social value, but also minimise transport. And we wanted to try and expand reuse within the county council. So there's 2 additional schemes that we run on our recycling centres as well. The community reuse scheme works directly with organisations who will put in a request through our website on an application form. These could be groups like a Scouts group, it could be a local charity working with homeless people. At the moment, we've got 14 active projects. And the beauty of this project is that it works quite well on the smaller sites where there's limited storage, where they can store the items for a specific group, and the group will come and collect the items when they're about to run out of the storage space. Doesn't always work like that, but that's the principle, and a lot of the time it does work like that. And the good thing about this scheme as well is it keeps the staff motivated. They can see tangible outcomes, and some of the staff have actually suggested groups that we work with. So we have some long-term groups that we work with, like Active Lancashire, who frequently accept bikes to refurbish from the recycling centres. We have short-term projects. For example, Chorley in Bloom for the flower show wanted 6 doors for an event to decorate for Chorley Flower Show. So we got the 6 doors, and that's the end of that project. We'll move on to something else. So it's a continually moving and changing project as well. The Reuse Hub is another solution where we have a central store. We feed stock in from primarily 2 recycling centres, and this generates a lot of social value. We work with colleagues in other county council services, and they act as referrers, for example, staff from the adult community service, social care, refugee integration service, and they become members of our website. We upload and categorize stuff which goes onto our website, and they can create orders to support the people that they work with. So this is, in a way, sort of like creating a mini circular economy within the county council. We also work with external organisations, but what we really wanted to do was generate this sort of rapport, this partnership with the other county council services. So Ruth, if you could move on to the next slide. We recognise that it's important to share what we do. So on the bottom left there is a banner that we created, we've displayed on our recycling centres, that just draws attention to a scheme we did in October, November last year, working with Wrap Up Lancashire, where the staff collected coats. So the staff are getting recognition of the work they've done, and the visitors can see what we've achieved as well. On the right is one of our material signs on a skip, and we've been adding barcodes onto those signs, which have a direct link through to our website, where we've got a suite of videos showing what actually happens to the materials on site. So with the mattresses, we've filmed directly with the mattress reprocessor, so people can actually see the journey of their mattress. We also have a video about our reuse shops, and one about the Reuse Hub, which hopefully we'll be able to show you in a minute. Just in addition to that, we do have a bespoke reuse plan for the staff on the recycling centres, because we do have a number of changing projects. Some sites, it might always be the same. If they work on a site that's got a reuse shop, month by month, you know, they'll be feeding reuse into their reuse shop. But there are additional projects that come and go as part of the community reuse project. So this keeps the staff updated as to what they're doing, who's benefiting from the scheme, and what items to target for reuse as well. So hopefully if we move on to the next slide, we'll be able to watch my lovely colleague Janine introducing the Reuse Hub, and some colleagues from other services too.
We put reuse at the heart of what we do on Lancashire's recycling centres, because we know it's more important than recycling. Reusing things saves energy and resources and benefits people by saving them money, as well as helping local communities. As well as our 3 reuse shops, we run a free, sustainable household support scheme called the Reuse Hub. The Reuse Hub is a members-only online platform which we use to put pre-loved homewares and furniture straight into the hands of the people who need them the most. Our members are professionals who make referrals through the Reuse Hub website for the people they support. They may belong to Lancashire's social care teams, or perhaps they work in a school, supporting students and their families. They could be charitable organisations who support young people leaving care, or they could work with vulnerable people in crisis. The Reuse Hub team, consisting of staff and volunteers, collects items from the recycling centres. They check, clean and catalogue them before putting them onto our website, ready for our members to order. We offer a click and collect service, allowing our members to pick up their orders directly from the hub. Additionally, we collaborate with the Children and Youth Justice Service for deliveries. Let's hear from a few of our members. Victoria works for Lancashire County Council's Refugee Integration Service and is a regular user of the Reuse Hub. Her job involves giving practical support to refugees, helping them to integrate into their new communities.
Exactly. Reuse Hub helps me very well because my target is to help people who just relocated to start new life here, to build new life. So it means they are refugees and they need basic things to live their life. So like bedding, furniture, dishes, and Reuse Hub is absolutely magic way how I can to help them to deliver all necessary stuff to make their apartment more comfy, more comfortable, so they can save money because lots of them can't find work because English. They are universal credit users. It means they need to save money. So that's why Reuse Hub, it is very useful service for people like refugee who really need help like that. I know it is for refugees the best option where they can get relevant in time help and good quality stuff.
It's not just about furniture and clothes though. Musin also works for the Refugee Integration Service and regularly collects bicycles from the Reuse Hub to support his service users.
The Reuse Hub plays a vital role in helping the service users getting around in Lancashire. One of the items which have been contributed by Reuse Hub is the bicycles. Majority of our service users are people escaping trauma from their home countries. They have lost their loved ones. And when they come to the country, they have to start from scratch. That being looking for work, trying to make sure they can be to the appointment they're supposed to be, whether it's interview, whether it's job center. And most of them, do they not have the funds to be able to use public transport or taxis? And Reuse Hub has been very generous in contributing bicycles to these families or to the service users. They are now mobile, they can attend to their appointment, they can go to work if they need to be, and they can explore our beautiful Lancashire. Most of our items we need, we just access through the website. It's just a matter of logging in and press of a button and you see what you need, and you can come and collect after a few days. So it's not complicated. As soon as you have the login details for your Reuse Hub, you can see all the items you need.
And then there's Katie, a family support worker at Woodnook Primary School in Accrington, who uses the Reuse Hub to order essential items for the family that she works with.
The Reuse Hub makes a difference to everybody that we work with. We have supported families who have fled fire damage, who have fled domestic abuse situations. We've kitted them out from a whole house to taking them over to the Preston unit to actually pick out their own items. It's been invaluable for them because it's just took an extra sort of level of worry off the shoulders. There's been all sorts of things that they've been able to get, just little things from, you know, rugs, curtains. It's all them little bits that makes a home, not just furniture and equipment. It's actual accessories, knives, forks, and it takes that pressure off as well, that financial pressure.
Last year, we gave over 2,100 people in Lancashire the essential furniture and homewares they needed to feel safe, comfortable and secure in their homes. This could have been by providing them with bedding, towels, crockery or pots and pans. It might simply have been a chest of drawers to put their clothes in or a mattress to sleep on. But whatever it was, everything we reused to help people at the Reuse Hub came from one of Lancashire's recycling centres.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that insight into our reuse hub. So just to summarize, it works like a shop, but it's all for free. So the beauty of having a website is that we have referrers all over the county, but they can sit alongside the person that they're supporting and actually look at the items we have in stock, and the person that's being supported can pick out the items that they like. So they can choose what they want to have in their home, and it'll be either delivered directly to their home, or the support worker can pick up from our reuse hub. It gives that level of dignity, and there's no sort of prolonged application process. So we're very fortunate, because we got very direct links within colleagues within Lancashire County Council. So we've got that degree of trust that we know if they're engaged with those staff, then there's a level of support that's needed. So we just go, yes, definitely we can support you, and we would accept them as members of our website, because we do scrutinise every single membership application, and then they can proceed to submit referrals. So we've got some brilliant partnerships which are fundamental. The Children and Youth Justice Service do all our deliveries for us. So this is a case of a young person's given court-ordered reparation work, will work alongside a support worker, and they will go and do the deliveries every Friday. The local prison service at Wymont, they have a commercial laundry. So they will launder all of our kids' clothes, duvets, sheets, towels, etc. So everything we give out is ready to be put into use. And our website's really useful in the background. Obviously, it's collecting all the data that we need for reporting. So if we could move on, Ruth. So that's a long list of just some of the services that we work with and we support. A few months ago, I engaged with the referrers just to look at the outcomes in their perspective, because obviously we'd be looking at tonnages, but there are many different outcomes in terms of the referrers. So there's a saving to their budget, which they gave me an estimated amount per order. And there's also savings to other services, for example, the NHS with missed appointments, less need for doctor's appointments as well. So there's a knock-on effect, if someone's well-being circumstances changed positively, there's less engagement with support services. And there's a value of increased service efficiency, which I think for me was a little bit unexpected, but great, because it makes their services more efficient if there's that element of trust developing that means that they can work more efficiently, they can gain positive outcomes quicker, and therefore they can increase their workload and engage with more people. So that's an estimated £809 per order, in addition to the carbon savings, our tonnage, etc. So it really is a win-win situation. So if we could move on to the next one. Those are just some of the testimonials from our referrers. I think when someone goes to a click and collect at the hub, we'll always speak to referrers. It's always interesting to hear the impact that items are making. One of the most interesting ones recently for me was Kevin from the Refugee Integration Service was collecting some dolls, which he was going to take along to a vaccination and immunisation clinic with some kids, just to act as sort of like a reassurance distraction for the kids to help things go more smoothly. Just little things like that just help things to run more smoothly and provide some important reuse too. Next slide. So like I said, yeah, we monitor the reuse too, but we have the additional outcomes in terms of numbers of people. Should note that the hub and community reuse tonnage with those is lower than the shops. The hub operates for 2 days per week, and we have 1 day per week for the deliveries as well. Community reuse tends to fluctuate. can move on to the next one. The resources, preparing stock, transportation are the two sort of main elements where we spend most of our time. That image there is of stock ready to go to the prison for laundry. So every month or so there's a laundry run to the prison which requires collection. There's moving stuff around the network as well, which there's a bit of an overlap between the hub, the community reuse, and the shops as well, where we move stock around. So I've given sort of estimates of how long I think it takes to fulfill the hub duties per week. We do work with volunteers as well. We have a few wonderful volunteers who contribute 2 days a week, and they help with the preparation of stock and warehousing as well. Next slide. Yeah, so when we first set up the hub, we didn't have a website. We used Facebook Marketplace and it was awful. I wouldn't recommend that at all. But a website, brilliant. We've found that some colleagues in other services instantly go, yeah, this is great, and will proceed to drain the hub of all its resources. They're prolific orderers, but those are the people who will spread the word to their colleagues. And they've been brilliant, sort of, you know, just it's working inside different services just to spread the word and get to more people using the service. We recognise there are local charities who have shared goals, so we work with them. We don't want to step on their toes, so we'll donate furniture where needed and work and share with their outcomes. And in a lot of cases, we do have to be flexible because the people we're supporting, their circumstances change very rapidly. They can be in crisis, and we've got some brilliant staff who are flexible. And in terms of deliveries, sometimes the van will return with deliveries because no one's been home to accept an order, but that's just the nature of the work that we do. So in terms of what's next, we want to start, well, we would like a bigger premises, but that's a work in progress. I think it makes sense to work towards more centralisation. I think we're naturally working in that direction anyway. And we're starting to expand some more into some pop-up events in the community centres, working with different groups, working with different services in youth centres, etc. Just getting out and about a little bit more. And I think that's it for me. Is the next slide. Yeah, there's my contact details if anybody would like to get in touch in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Kat. That was really, really interesting, and I think a really good example of circular living within a council in action. So that's great. Moving swiftly on, we've now got. I'd like to introduce Rebecca Parry from who's the Renew Manager with Suez, and Victoria Parker, who is from Cornwall County Council, and she's the assisted integrated waste management contract team leader. So over to you guys. We've got a double act for you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Yeah, my name's Victoria and I work in the waste team at Cornwall Council. And I wanted to start with a little bit of a background of who we are and what the position is here in Cornwall. So if we can move on to the first slide. Thank you. So here in Cornwall, we have a population of over 500,000 residents in over 280,000 households. In 2023-24, our residents produced over 268,000 tonnes of waste. And of this waste, over 76,000 tonnes came to us directly through our recycling centres. And I'm ashamed to say that of this tonnage, less than 1% of this went to reuse. We have a network of 14 household waste recycling centres here in Cornwall. And as you can imagine, each of our sites differs in terms of its layout, its size, and the population served. Our sites are increasingly popular, and last year we had over 1.5 million individual visits from our residents. So our current reuse journey started about 12 months ago, and it's been a really exciting and fast-paced year for us. But we need to go back a couple of years to understand the drive that we had to get us where we are now. If you can move on to the next slide. Thank you. So back in 2017, one of our elected councillors came to us with an idea to set up a reuse partnership with a local community interest company. We were able to support the group with suitable reuse items that we collected at a donation station, at first on one of our recycling centres, but quickly expanded to several more sites. The partnership continues to be very successful with a lot of support within the local area. Fast forward to 2020, and we concluded a councillor-led review of the services we provide at our HWRCs, with a recommendation for reuse being an agreed priority going forwards. From this, we were tasked with seeing whether we could partner any other third sector groups, and we were able to successfully set up another charity partnership and support a number of ad hoc reuse projects in areas local to our sites. So this was real fantastic progress for us, but we had the support and the drive to do so much more. It was really recognised by a range of our stakeholders that there was a vast opportunity to separate items that were suitable for reuse or upcycling, and for us to resell these directly on our sites. It was really important to us to increase the volume of materials that we could divert away from recycling and recovery and keep these resources within the local circular economy. We had a lot of support from our local communities, and over the past few years, the question that we have most on our sites is, can we get a reuse shop? Why don't you open a reuse facility? Can we have that sort of service here? So we knew what we wanted to do. We knew it would be really well supported. We just needed a plan of action. And that really brings us to summer of last year. We're working in partnership with our waste disposal contractor, Suez. We had our new Renew manager, Becky, appointed. And I'm going to hand over to Becky so that she can take us through the whirlwind journey we've had since then.
Thanks, Victoria. Ruth, please can you go to the next slide? So my name is Becky Parry. I'm the Renew manager for Suez in Cornwall, and when I started in June of last year, I came from a background of charity retail, so I approached reuse with quite fresh and exciting ideas, and I saw it as a real opportunity to really bring a change to sites and approach it from a retail perspective instead of having worked in the waste industry previously. So we developed some original ideas and concepts and names, and we worked with our internal design team to help develop our brand. We wanted to really develop a new identity for reuse in Cornwall, so it was a standalone brand, and we wanted to move away from corporate branding to encourage members of the public and make it feel really welcoming and approachable. We wanted it to be really fun and engaging and easily recognisable with mass appeal, especially for those vintage and salvage enthusiasts as well as the general public. So like I said, I came with the approach that I wanted to. I saw it as an opportunity to influence how the sites are being, how the sites are seen. They're not just the tip or the dump, which everyone likes to call them still, but I wanted to change the image to see them as recycling and reuse centres. And we're starting to see the early sort of seedlings or saplings of this, if you like, already, but obviously there's going to be longer term change will hopefully happen and be seen more regularly on sites. Please could you go to the next slide? Thank you. So this was our concept chosen for our vision. We went with a vintage look to appeal to the recycling and the vintage enthusiasts, but also it follows our Cornish heritage, which includes the tin mine and the sea silhouette, which pays homage to our lovely Cornish symbols and heritage. It's got a bit of a surf shack appeal to the logo as well, and it looks and feels very different to everything else on sites. The colour's not typical. If you look at the container there, it's a talking point on sites because it does look very, very different, and it's a positive talking point. It's also somewhere I wanted to develop somewhere that I felt like I would want to shop as well, and that would appeal to a wider audience of people. Can you go to the next slide, please, Ruth? sorry. So the what, where, when and how. So we managed our teams, sorry, I'll go back to locations first. So initially we identified the 14 locations in Cornwall. We focused on the central part of Cornwall, looking at our sites that had the biggest footfall and the best site for our reuse shops. Ideally with best areas for parking, and where we could ideally place the reuse containers at the front or at the entrance of the sites, so it's the first thing that people see, because we've identified that that's really valuable for the change in people's mindsets about reuse first over recycling. So our sites, our two initial sites were identified in central Cornwall, and then we have expanded out to other locations in the east and west. We have a booking system on some of these sites, and we are also open 7 days a week. We have had a phased rollout. So we've approached it looking at each phase individually. So we've opened 5 shops so far, and we're planning on opening another 5 shops this year as well. Looking at our locations and where we can reach as many people as quickly as possible, identifying those sites with the greatest space and potential. We have engaged not only the team but the community as well in the process. So as Victoria mentioned, there's been regular surveys done on sites as to, you know, getting feedback from customers, and regularly the request is, when are we going to have a reuse shop on site? So we've looked at all of that feedback, again engaged with our teams on sites, asking for their input into where they think the shops would be best situated, and, you know, moving current or existing the existing site around to best facilitate the whole site and making it easy accessible for members of the public. We've also developed internal training and support. So when we've recruited new members of staff, we've looked at the recruitment, identified people that initially internally, if they have any retail experience and they're really passionate about reuse, whether they would like to move into the position of a reuse operative with having site operative experience as well. But where there are spaces, we have recruited specifically reuse operatives with retail experience, and then we've also trained them up as a site operative as well in the process, so they are able to do both roles. We've also trained and developed the teams on site so they can support the reuse role as well. So when our reuse operative is off or on annual leave, there is staff trained within the site as well to use the till and to merchandise and sell items within our shops. We've also made sure that there's very clear signage on sites. So as a new shop is opening, we have reuse shop coming soon banners. We involve, we add Facebook posts announcing our new shops being delivered and the locations that are going to be popping up and appearing, so the community gets engaged and involved with that process as well. And then I support the teams with ongoing training and development as well, making improvements as we grow, and we're learning and reflecting at each phase. Next slide, please. So our shop design and sustainability. So as I said before, we looked internally just to see what resource we had and tapped into unknown skills and created opportunities with our existing team. So that was specifically around our internal maintenance team, who have I put together mood boards for the look and feel of the shops. I wanted it to be practical and appealing in approach. So although it's a shipping container, we wanted to make it appealing and inviting and welcoming as well with its approach. So each shop is bespoke to each site, but the branding is consistent across the sites, and obviously the colour of our shops like I said, it creates interest and conversation on site. So where we've managed to develop our teams, there's been increased morale, job satisfaction. We've had happier teams who are motivated, and therefore we're also increasing our shop sales. Our shops have been built wherever possible using reuse materials. So the scaffolding planks and key clamp we've repurposed wherever possible. And because they're containers, it allows us to be able to expand and improve, add on top, to the side, make them like adaptations as reuse develops across the whole of Cornwall. And in the future, we're looking to introduce solar panels to our roofs or living walls to expand our sustainability and also potentially expand our footprint and offering on sites. We use Cornish companies as well for our shop fittings, anything that we can't do internally. So we're supporting our local economy, we're reducing carbon emissions instead of teams travelling from elsewhere. And we're looking to make improvements to our first shops already, having been open almost 10 months. We're looking to go back, and then as we've learned, as we've developed each shop, we'll go back and make improvements and adaptations to our first shops, because we can already see, you know, on reflection where those improvements can be made. Next slide, please. So our social and economic impact. So not only are we creating jobs and upskilling our internal workforce, so we have 8 full-time roles, including myself. We've recruited with retail experience first, ideally for the shops in particular. And then we also have a bike repair technician and also an electrical repair person as well, working in our electrical repair hub. So we're developing our skills in our existing teams, and obviously that brings with it, like I said previously, increased morale, you know, the opportunity for development, and you know, everyone, it's brought the whole team on board with reuse, because they can see how well it's performing and how good it is for people to be able to develop their skills in other areas. So we're working with Cornwall Council at all levels. We have a monthly steering group where we communicate collaboratively, working really positively together about what's happening, future plans for reuse, any opportunities that we can work on together. So we're looking at expanding into the Repair Cafe network. We've got existing partnerships with charities which are really valuable for us, and we want to increase our donations and also increase our opportunities to work with other charities going forward and other businesses potentially in the future. So we have recently sourced a small warehouse solution to support our operation and also our charity collections. So that's a really exciting, a very quick expansion, obviously with the 5 shops, and then also the warehouse building. We also have a pop-up shop which will be launching at the Royal Cornwall Show in a couple of weeks. So that will also mean we have greater opportunity to pop up in other locations for events or universities, for example, reaching more people and reaching more communities across Cornwall. But it also means we can have themed pop-up events as well. So we can do bike pop-ups, we can do electrical pop-ups, so we can identify areas that specifically need items and then pop up in that location as well, and hopefully, like I said, have repair pop-up events as well going forward. So from feedback and observation, obviously on sites, we're reaching the lower income households in Cornwall, and students and families who are benefiting the most in each area. We're giving the community a sense of pride. We're changing cultures on sites. People, communities want reuse on their sites because other areas are having it. The interaction on social media has been very positive, as it has been on sites. You know, everyone's very welcoming of reuse and the movement in Cornwall. And obviously, it supports the local circular economy, which is really important. Next slide, please. So our early results, we currently have 5 shops trading with over 100 tonnes diverted, which is over 20,000 items sold. We have 800 plus Facebook followers, which I hope after today, please go and follow us, Kerno Reuse. Shameful plug, I'm really sorry. So we'll have hopefully a 900 by the end of this webinar. So you can see some of our posts there. I manage our Facebook page. We're not just building shops in Cornwall, we're obviously building a brand and a personality. I'm interacting with lots of different updates, you know, sharing podcasts, local repair cafe events. We're building a community of repair and reuse within Cornwall, sharing good news about local charities we're working with, and just really gathering momentum for reuse and repair in Cornwall, which in turn helps to support our reuse shops and for people to obviously be aware that what we're doing in Cornwall and how they can get involved. So we plan to open 5 more shops in Cornwall this year, and then we move on to the last 4 shops in 2026. Next slide, please. So this slide is just a little gallery of images from our current reuse shops in Cornwall. So on the top left there is our Launceston shop on opening day. As you can see, very bright, very bold, very interesting, very different to everything else on site, but it's a real talking point, it's a real positive on sites. In the middle there, you've got on the top, we've got our St Austell shop with its shelving and display, merchandising. So I'm supporting our teams on site with merchandising and how the look and the feel, how getting them nice and tidy, looking sharp and interesting and not cluttered and overrun with items. Then on the top right, we've got our St Austell shop. It's one of our smaller sites, and we had quite a tricky movement of items to be able to fit in a shop that was suitable and sized suitably. You can see there's 2 shipping containers with a big gap in the middle there for items. We're looking at that site to potentially go back and make improvements, obviously having a canopy for those outside items, and just seeing whether we can expand the footprint there at all or change how the containers are fitted together. Like with Launceston, you can see they're connected actually throughout. There's an archway through that connects them up into an L shape. So we're looking at potentially whether we might be able to go back and do that in our St Austell shop, which was one of our first sites. On the bottom left, we've got our Falmouth official launch opening in January, a bit of a damp day there in Cornwall. We had our local councillor attend and cut the ribbon. Again, really positively received by the local community. We have a big student population in Falmouth, and it's one of our busier shops actually for sales, just because of the student population. And we're working really closely there with Falmouth University as well to see how we can develop that relationship and expand on our support with the university. So in the middle bottom there, we've got one of our signs, nice clear donation station signage. We try and make sure our signage is very different to the current signage on our HWRCs, so it's visible and we don't want to cause sign blindness, which is obviously quite common on our HWRC. There's lots of messaging, lots of signage, so we try and make it stand out a little bit more with our branding and making it feel slightly different to any of the HWRC signage. And then on the bottom right, there was a recent volunteer day with a local charity, Hidden Help, who we've been supporting for some time with reuse items. They were moving premises and needed extra hands and bodies to help, and trucks and vans, which we provided, and we've helped them move premises. They're a fantastic charity and we continue to support them, and we hope our support will grow with reuse items as we grow as well our reuse operation in Cornwall. Thank you very much. That's it from me.
Thank you very much, Vicky and Becky. It was really, really interesting. And when you said at the start, Vicky, that it's been a whirlwind 12 months, it really has. I've seen that journey. And I think from my point of view, I've got family in St Austell that I've spoken to when they've used the reuse shop and they said how good it was. So some personal feedback there for you. I'm just conscious of time, and we've still got 2 more great speakers, so we're going to just jump straight into Dawn's presentation now, and we will capture all the Q&As towards the end, if that's all right, Dawn.
Yep, that's great.
Dawn
Thanks.
is the Service Development Manager at Suffolk County Council. Welcome, Dawn.
Thanks, Ruth. I will not take as long as maybe what I planned, because I'm mindful that there's another speaker, but if you need any information, feel free to contact me afterwards. But I wanted to talk to you today about the redevelopment of Foxhall Recycling Centre. It's to the east of Ipswich, which is our main county town. We've got 11 recycling centres in Suffolk, and they're all managed and operated by FCC Environment. They were critical in the success of this redevelopment, which I'll come on to some of those elements in a moment. So the site, I'm sorry you haven't got a real picture. It does exist, I promise. We did actually build it, but that's the artist impression, and it does look fairly like that, just a bit more real life. We developed a one-way system. We designed out steps. I'm sure everybody's got the same health and safety issues. The number one problem is people and steps, tripping up them, down them, sideways. And we really wanted a focus of on reuse. So the site was designed so that the reuse shop was the first thing that you come to, and it can operate independently of the recycling centre. The recycling centre's got different opening hours. The reuse shop has got longer opening hours. So we wanted to make sure that that wasn't stifled. Next slide, please, Ruth.
Oh, I jumped. Apologies.
Yeah. And back another one.
Oh.
And back another. Oh.
Back another.
Yeah, that one's fine. Yeah, that one. Thank you. So the site at Foxhall was, like a lot of our old civic community sites, as we used to call them, was too small. The previous site had its challenges, and we only actually had temporary planning permission. And the temporary, although it's been a long time temporary, it meant that whatever we did on that site, we needed to do quite a significant reconstruction of the highway outside, because the access of it wasn't good. It's on a B road, quite a busy B road. It's a main road into Ipswich. So you know, we knew that we wanted to have it all one level, so it's a split level site. And yeah, we didn't want to have the steps. It was really restricted for growth. There's an awful lot of growth going on in that part of Ipswich. The reuse shop, although we already had a reuse shop there, it was difficult in terms of its external space. It was quite small outside, not enough parking. We had significant drainage issues, mainly because it was built on an old landfill site. So a couple of times a year, it would kind of disappear underwater and slowly started to sink. So that was a bit of a problem. Next slide, please, Ruth. So in terms of what we needed to do on that site, as I said, it was in desperate need of expansion. It's the most densely populated catchment area of all our 11 recycling centres, and it actually took in, or still takes in, 20% of the total waste. So that's around 12,000 tonnes of all of the recycling centres. And as I said before, the growth in that area is huge. They're already going up at a rate of knots, and obviously lots more to come. So again, that site needed to be bigger. Next slide, please, Ruth. So I think my main message for today's session, and because this was probably the biggest learning curve for us during that development, because we redeveloped it in phases, and we had the remit that we needed to keep the site open for the public. So as you can imagine, that was quite tricky. But in the procurement, we made it really clear that the construction of the site was really important to the communication with other businesses on the site, and with our site operator FCC, and with the public, that was a really strong element of, and a priority for us. We knew that closing the site for a long period wasn't an option. However, we did look at it because the spiralling costs, but actually it wasn't going to save us a huge amount of time if we did close it and hand it over entirely to the construction company. So as I said, we managed it in phases. And we had a programme of liaison for the contractor that they signed up to. So you know, we knew that the teams had to work closely together, both the operations team on site and the construction team, but we made them sign up to quite a detailed way of communicating, including daily briefings at the end of every day, just to make sure everybody knew what was happening for the next day. And those things are quite obvious in terms of what we included in our comms plan, but the signage, again, we didn't want anybody turning up on site who didn't know where they needed to go, or who, you know, got entered into the CDM area or anything awful like that. You know what the public are like, they're good at getting in places they shouldn't be. So we made sure that was really obvious on site, and we also included site maps on our website and on our booking system pages. The booking system was absolutely key in managing the demand on this site during the construction. So we also did councillor and stakeholder briefings, and I know this sounds really obvious, but we put quite a lot of time and effort into these, and we invited every man and his dog to come to the team sessions because we wanted councillors especially to be on board, and it meant that we were giving them that information ahead of the public knowing things. Councillors love to have a tip off, don't they? They like to know things before the public do. So that really paid dividends, and the on-site liaison with our customers as well was really important. And I think the site teams got really good at communicating with the public on site, and really kind of gave that it's short-term pain for long-term gain type feeling. Next slide, please, Ruth. As I mentioned, we did it in a phased construction. So the first phase, because I haven't featured it on here, it was very much a business as usual for the operations of the recycling centre, and then the site kind of built up around it, which was really quite impressive. And you can see from the picture on the right that we put the reuse shop very much at the focal point when you first enter the site. So it's a one-way system, and you come to that first, again kind of reinforcing the hierarchy of reuse, which has worked really well. Next slide, please, Ruth. So this is just a picture of the retaining wall that we installed. So because it was on, we were building on old landfill, which I wouldn't recommend. It's really awkward. We couldn't find a contractor that would take on the risk of piling. I think the original design had literally hundreds of piles that needed to go into the ground. So we worked with our contractor, RG Carter, who built it, to come up with an alternative method, which is this wall. I can't give you the technical spiel because it's not waste, so I don't know about it, but they use it a lot in highway construction, and we figured if it was good enough for roads, it's probably good enough for a recycling centre. But we'd never actually seen it in an application of a recycling centre before. So if anybody wants any information on it, the site's still standing, so it's worked so far, and it seems to be holding up all right. Next slide, please, Ruth. And yeah, we took out an awful lot of landfill, actually, 2,500 tonnes, which was what impacted the price of the project so much. But again, the contractor was really good at working with us on reducing that cost. So they hired in a big trommel, and they sorted the different grades of waste, so we didn't have to, you know, we could pay appropriately for what needed to be disposed of. And we did have a few finds. We found from the 70s or 80s, like a original Fairy liquid washing up bottle. Do you remember the white tall bottles with the lid? So yeah, that was quite eye-opening. Next slide, please, Ruth. The reuse shop. So we'd already got a reuse shop on site at Foxhall. It hadn't been there terribly long. We didn't have enough money to buy a new one. Couldn't see the point in doing that. So we relocated the existing one and created a separate space for it. And that included much bigger outside space. Anyone who runs reuse operations know that you can't have enough outside space really, or indoor space. And then we also incorporated that canopy, so that gave greater outside space with a bit of protection from the weather. We've got another reuse shop on another site, the other side of the county. So we've only got 2 reuse shops, and all of the items from all of our 11 recycling centres feed into those reuse shops. And that's managed and run by a charity. Next slide, please. This is just a picture of the top level, which actually that picture makes it look like it's sinking. I promise you it's not. I think it's just a bit of an arty photo. But you can see the top level is kind of the traditional design that we see with split level sites, with the gantries and the high level signage. So it's really easy for people to access. And then final slide, please, Ruth. Just kind of key lessons for us. So we invested quite a lot, ironically, in a good QS who managed the costs for us, which was huge, but it paid dividends. Any kind of future projects that we're doing now, we're inflating our budget right at the start, because you know how it can take, you know, years to go from inception to actually even procuring a construction contractor. So allow for that at the start, because it will always cost more than what you ever think. Building on an old landfill is not a good idea. I wouldn't recommend it. But in the circumstances, it was the best that we could do. We looked at relocating the site, but it didn't add up for us to do that. One of the key things, as I've said before, was being open and honest and managing expectations of councillors. You know, we knew it was a bit of a tough time, but it was all going to be worth it in the end, and it has been, so that's good. And also briefing the councillors ahead of anything going out to the public. And that rapport between the construction staff and the site operatives was imperative. You know, we really needed them to get on, work together, and do it for the greater good, which happened, which was really good. We did have a moment where, once we built it, we're like, oh, why did we put a lamppost there? And it looked really good on paper. So I'd say check and double check the design. Putting things in the way of HGV drivers is not wise. It wasn't right in the middle of the yard, but it would have been better somewhere else. And the involvement of our site operator, so FCC Environment, you know, they're on a contract with us, not forever, but actually having their involvement and how to operate the site and what's best for them at the time was really important. And also getting them on side with the final product. You know, they've got to live there and operate the site. So that was really important. I would say always apply for SIL or Section 106 funding, no matter how small you think the contribution is going to be. We find that for us it's really key, because we need planners and developers to know that this costs taxpayers money to build new sites, and it's a really key part of community infrastructure. So that was really important for us. Although it can be highly frustrating, stick with it, because you might get some money. And the limitations of the site and operating the site during construction meant that we had a big increase in visitors and tonnage displaced through our other recycling centres nearby. So the booking system, we were lucky that we had that in place and really helped to manage demand. And sorry, there is one more slide finally, please, Ruth. So just to say that it was a team effort. It was supposed to take 18 months, but we actually finished ahead of schedule, which is always a good headline. We didn't quite come in on budget though. We had to increase the budget significantly over time. When we first started thinking about rebuilding Foxhall, probably about 8 years ago, we had a budget of £3 million. Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. When we started, it was at the point when the invasion into Ukraine happened, so that had a massive impact on the supply chain. And yeah, out of that £8.3 million, £5 million of it was underground. So that was quite a tough sell when we took councillors around. They're like, really, this cost £8 million, but you can't see most of it. And a lot of that is due to the requirements for drainage is so high, the spec that we need, and mitigation for floods. And in the end, our perseverance paid off, and we did get just under £1 million from the SIL funding from the local district council. So that made a big difference to the budget. I think that's it, Ruth. Thank you.
That was brilliant. Thank you, Dawn. Appreciate it was a whistle-stop tour, and it was no mean feat for you. I don't think that was quite a challenge, keeping a site operational while redeveloping it. And I think thank you for your honesty in some of the lessons learned and advice, because that's really welcomed by other officers. I think, like we said, we always want to learn from other people's experiences. So we're going to move on now to James. James Holt is from Hertfordshire County Council, and he's going to talk to us about the development of their new super site. So a little bit different strategy to Dawn's. Over to you, please.
Right.
James.
Morning, everyone. Thank you. Just to say that I recognise an awful lot and agree with an awful lot of what Dawn's just said. So although perhaps I won't pick up a lot of that in this presentation, absolutely the challenges of delivering a site is definitely recognised, and it's quite nice to see similarities in what we do and what you've gone through. So that's great. Part of my presentation, I'm just going to touch briefly on the processes of identifying a new recycling centre and talk about two of our most recent developments. So just by way of background, Hertfordshire County Council operates 16 recycling centres, as shown on the map, and the service has been directly operated by the council since October 2020. We have 16 recycling centres that accept approximately 86,000 tonnes of material last financial year, of which about 1,800 tonnes of that is commercial waste. And as everyone will recognise, these figures continue to grow year on year. Last financial year, we had approximately 2 million visits, and that put significant strain on the services, particularly during peak times. But overall, the network has a diversion from residual waste rate of about 71%. So that's really positive. The majority of sites were historically located on land that was available at the time that no one else wanted. And as it has been said before, not all the sites are ideal. And as indicated on the map, not sure how well you can see that, but all of the sites have been RAG rated to identify where improvements in the network are required. So next slide, please. So this is our catchily titled Local Authority Collected Waste Spatial Strategy. So that rolls off the tongue. Sets out the current state of our recycling centre network and identifies sites that are in need of improvement. This document is also really important because it acts as a hook to get these sites included in things like the local plan, and also helps with the need argument for funding and planning applications. This strategy was last updated in April 2022, so it's a little bit out of date, and we're due to review later this year. Next slide, please. So the spatial strategy sets out the guiding criteria for future recycling centre provision, and it highlights what an ideal recycling centre should look like, with the idea being that residents' needs can be better served by a smaller network of larger sites. This will enhance the user experience with a quicker turnaround and the ability to recycle and reuse more items. So the guiding criteria is shown on this slide, but to pick a few, a larger site should be able to enhance accessibility, serve more people at one time, and cover a larger catchment area. The addition of a split level and the separate service areas for containers is key in this. Next slide, please. The strategy also goes on to identify what we call a super site. The requirements of that include a number of things, but it needs to be a site that's at least 1 hectare in size. And this is really key in local plans so that suitably sized sites can be included. But as I will talk about a bit later on, better use of the land available may mean that a smaller site can be utilised for super site purposes. The site should also include a large reuse centre and workshop space with dedicated parking, internal queuing lanes to take vehicles off the highway, and this is particularly key in planning, was particularly key for us as it was a key planning requirement, especially with the sites with historic queuing issues. The split level design allows the majority of waste to be deposited without the need of lifting or carrying up steps, and a large number of parking and loading spaces configured to segregate service users from centre traffic. A super site should also include a fenced off area, enabling container exchanges to take place without closure of the centre, and include improved site offices and welfare. So 2 such sites that have been earmarked for replacement within the spatial strategy and have subsequently been upgraded to super site standards are our Coal Green and Ware recycling centres. Essentially, both sites were too small for the current demand and unsuitable for projected population growth. Both existing sites were located on major A roads, with queuing frequently occurring at peak times, and this was made worse by the need to close the sites during operational hours for the servicing of containers. Next slide, please. So this brings us on to our Welwyn Garden City Recycling Centre, which is one of the case studies on the RAP website. And this is going to be the focus of the next couple of slides. This is our latest site, opened in May 2024, and it was a collaboration between Welwyn Hatfield Borough Council to find a more central location to replace the Coal Green site I just mentioned, whilst co-locating it with Welwyn Hatfield's depot. And this was aimed at providing better value for money for the taxpayer and also have service delivery benefits. So the development is located in the centre of Welwyn Garden City, and it includes upgrading and future-proofing Welwyn Hatfield's current depot whilst making better use of the available land. The development area is relatively large at approximately 1.6 hectares, but prior to development this was underutilised. Essentially, the development splits the site in half, with the depot on the right and the recycling centre on the left. The area is approximately 0.75 hectares, but a super site could be achieved through the use of shared areas, which I'll touch on in a minute. The development was phased to ensure that Welwyn Hatfield's collection services and street scene services could continue whilst the construction works happened, with the left-hand side of the site utilised for that purpose whilst the depot was constructed, with the recycling centre completed as phase 2. The existing coal beam recycling centre remained open while the recycling centre was completed. So, next slide, please. So the main elements of the design were a split level to assist site users with depositing their waste, with the level difference created using precast concrete walls, as you may be able to see in the top right-hand photo. We put canopies over the upper and lower container levels, providing protection or some protection from the elements, and also holding the solar panels, which can generate up to 103,000 kilowatt hours per annum. The design also included a queuing lane on site to take traffic off the main road, which is a key planning requirement, particularly as our old Coal Green site had queuing issues and a new facility is located within a busy built-up area. We also needed to make sure that the recycling centre users didn't impact on the operation of the depot. The shared area well in Hatfield, which is shown in yellow on the plan on the bottom of the slide, allows for the containers on the lower level to be serviced while the site remains open. It's also used for JCB compaction. And the use of that kind of shared area meant that the depot could manoeuvre things like their dust carts and other vehicles, but during the day then it's left open so that we can utilise it. So good use of shared land. But we had to put in operational arrangements with Welwyn Hatfield, along with warning beacons and signage to ensure that compaction and container exchanges can take place as safely as possible. Next slide, please. So the design also includes high-level signage, as you can see on the top picture, and interchangeable signage, which is designed to make it as easy as possible for site users to find the right container, and that's especially key on larger sites. The fence and gates ensure that site users are kept clear of the containers when compaction takes place, and walkways and crossing areas are also clearly marked out. One of the lessons that we learned from our previous recycling centre design, which was the Ware Recycling Centre, was not to use bump stops for vehicle and pedestrian segregation. And although those bump stops did work and stopped cars from reversing onto walkways, they became trip hazards when the parking spaces were empty or site users didn't reverse back far enough. So as you can see on those photos, we used bright yellow bollards at Welwyn Garden City and also replaced the bump stops at Ware. The site incorporates a dedicated reuse shop and parking area, along with a drop-off point for donated items, and also includes a weighbridge for the acceptance of commercial waste, which provides us a disposal option for small businesses whilst generating an income. Next slide, please. So in terms of sustainability, some of the main benefits from this site include, as previously mentioned, the solar panels, generating up to 103,000 kilowatt hours per annum. Also included grey water harvesting, which is used for the vehicle wash in the depot and the toilet flushing in the staff welfare and reuse blocks. The use of JCB compaction significantly increases container payloads, improving capacity and reducing hauling costs and associated carbon footprint. In addition, they also run on hydrogenated vegetable oil. Some of our older sites, we use static compactors, but the JCB gives us greater flexibility in being able to compact more materials, as opposed to being restricted to only a couple of waste types. Electric vehicle charging points have been installed for the depot staff and future electric street scene fleet, and there is also pedestrian access and bike park area to support sustainable transport. The reuse shop has staff that are trained in pack testing, so we can do electrical item sales, and along with a wide range of other household items, with over 25,000 items sold in the first year of operation. We've also utilised the workshop area for a number of upcycling events. The shop and wider reuse network also supports a wide range of local charities, schools and vulnerable people through our community donation scheme. Last slide, please. So lastly, I just wanted to touch briefly on our Ware Recycling Centre, which is shown in the top of the photos, which was the first super site in Hertfordshire. The Ware Recycling Centre, which is located off a busy A602 in the east of the county, was completed in October 2020 and was constructed on a council-owned disused landfill site. So hence a lot of similarities with the Foxhall site. This provided opportunities to build a large site without the additional land purchase costs, but also caused problems in remediating the old landfill. The availability of this land resulted in the construction of the largest recycling centre in the network, basically because it was being an old landfill site. No one else wanted it, so we were able to use it to our best advantage. So in many ways, it is very similar to the Welwyn Garden City site, as it was used as a template. So it includes the same split level design, although this split level was built using sheet piles. So that's interesting to hear the comments about Foxhall, as opposed to the precast concrete walls used at Welwyn Garden City. This site is actually powered by electricity generated from the adjacent landfill site. So we're surrounded by a Westville landfill site. So in very simple terms, Hertfordshire's waste is actually used to power the new recycling centre. And due to the large land availability of approximately 1.4 hectares, this site also has an upper level service area, allowing these containers to be serviced whilst the site is open. And lastly, from me, keeping the theme of co-located facilities, our new Eastern Transfer Station is currently in construction on the remainder of the council-owned landfill site. But the photo on the bottom of this slide shows a computer-generated image of how the site will look by the end of this year, with the transfer station to the rear of the recycling centre. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, James. Again, another really interesting case study of your journey, and I think particularly interesting your strategy and approach, and going back right to the start of the webinar where we asked the first poll question about the audience and have any of them got strategies, and the resounding answer was no. So maybe taking a look at the document you illustrated at the start and your journey might help other authorities think about their journey as well. So thanks very much. A really big thank you to all our speakers. I think we do have a few questions. I am conscious of time, so I'm just going to look at just a few for now, and just to recap that the webinar recording will be made available. We will share the slides, and I think somebody's asked the video from Lancashire County Council, can that be shared as well? So I think Kat gave permission, so we will make all that available. So I think one of the first questions we've got was actually from one of our fellow panelists to another panelist. So drawn to Kat, was asking Kat that she'd really like to know if you still get the same sort of income from the reuse hub compared to the selling in the shop to residents. And I'm guessing you perhaps answered that later on in the presentation.
Yeah, everything's free in the reuse hub. It's a case of, you know, the social value that we reap back in terms of how we support people and their other services, but everything is totally free in the reuse hub.
And I guess the benefit as well is that other departments within the county council are making savings. So whilst the waste team's budget might not see a direct benefit, the county council's budgets are.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kat. Another question for Kat, I guess it's how do you manage different groups going onto the HWRCs in terms of safety? Do you have any clear principles, practices, regulations?
Yes, that's a really good question. It's something that we put a lot of thought into, because obviously there are concerns. In all groups are required to wear PPE and to sign an agreement to access a recycling centre to collect their items. So when they complete the application, if we do think it's something that we can fulfil for the group, they would need to sign up to some terms and conditions in order to access the recycling centre. But I'm not sure who the questions come from, but feel free to email me and I can share that with you.
Thank you, Kat. We've got a question to Ian. Have you found it difficult to encourage councillors to agree to closing smaller sites in their council areas to create super sites?
Absolutely, yeah, it's really difficult. I think if I was talking to Sally, I think, from RAP yesterday. And when we looked at the numbers in terms of number of sites that have closed since 2013 to now, less than a 4% reduction in the total number of sites across the whole of the UK, which really kind of illustrates how challenging it's been to not necessarily get rid of sites, but kind of have that conversation about super sites. And I think the super site concept is one that's really fit for now, because a lot of old and strained infrastructure is finding it difficult to kind of keep up. And the super site concept acknowledges, as James had in terms of its criteria and principles around the sites, having sites with greater reach than they previously did. So this was one of the things that we looked at in the guide around the previous drive time analysis and what is the right amount of time for residents to be able to get to a site. And we acknowledge that as a useful tool, but maybe not as an absolute definitive, because the super site concept may mean that people travel further. So we're working with a number of councils at the moment where we're kind of continuing to provide robust evidence to help them make those decisions. But yeah, it is difficult. And like I say, the total reduction since 2013 illustrates it really. They are political footballs. You'll know this. They are vote winners and vote losers for politicians. So it makes it very, very difficult. And I think the approach that James had illustrated about having a dedicated strategy around what they mean to an organisation really helps to build that framework to hang those decisions off and actually bring those elected members and key stakeholders along with you. So I would urge you to kind of have a branch from your overarching strategies that focus specifically on this area, just to kind of give it that focus and give it the momentum and understanding that's needed, really.
Thank you, Ian. I'm really conscious of time. We've had 4 great case studies and Ian running us through the guide. So I'm just going to take one more question before we look to wrap up. But I know if there are any questions that we've not managed to capture, we can follow those up by emails. And I think all the panelists have shared their contact details and expressed that they'd be willing to follow up any. So just the final one, which I think will be a quick one, to Becky. Can you remind us of the branding, the reuse shop branding that had the Vintage Surf branding?
Say the question again, sorry, Ruth.
Yeah, I think somebody's getting confused thinking that you've used the Vintage Surf branding just for one particular shop. It's the branding per se.
The branding across the whole of Cornwall, so it's consistent branding. It was that final concept on our slide that I shared. So if you watch it back, you'll see the branding is consistent across all sites, and it's just the shops that change on site depending on our footprint and our site area. But yeah, the branding is consistent across all sites. It can also be seen on our Facebook page, so please go and follow us there.
And what was the Facebook page again, Becky?
It's Kernow Reuse Shops.
There you go. So please, take a look at that. So just moving forward, I just want to make people aware we've got some more webinars coming up in the next few weeks. The initial ones with a bit of a food waste focus. So next week, we've got one on the food waste tracker insights, focusing on Northern Ireland. The following week, we'll be looking at England's results. Towards the end of June, on the 23rd of June, we've got some more great case study speakers from Essex County Council, looking at how they've been making the most of food waste collections with the collection authorities. And on the 16th of July, we've got one on our Carbon 1-2, looking at the carbon waste and resources metrics. So please do take a look at those, and you can sign up to those on our webinar page. And then just another shout out for our Rescue, Meet, Recycle assets that we launched back in Recycle Week last year. They are being refreshed seasonally, so please do keep checking in, and there'll be assets around sort of Wimbledon. We had Spring Clean, New Year's resolutions, so that you can keep that message alive and keep it going throughout. So for me, just a really big thank you to all our guest speakers, Ian, Dawn, Kat, Becky, Vicky and James. Thank you very much for your time and sharing your experiences and that honesty. I'm sure that they will be really welcomed from all the people that have joined today. So thank you very much from me. And if anybody does want any follow-up support in terms of household waste recycling centres or this webinar, please don't hesitate to drop any of the local authority support team an email. you can either do it through our generic email address, which is la.support@wrap.ngo, or we've all got the same domain, so it'd be sally.wilson@wrap.ngo, for example. I'm sorry that's been a bit of a whistle stop. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your days. And once again, go and grab a cup of tea. It's International World Tea Day. Thank you very much, everybody.